Hi, I am Brittany Pacheco.
And I'm Amber Churchwell.
And we are the Watchers in the Basement. Welcome back to our channel. And welcome. If you are new, consider subscribing to the Watchers in the Basement by hitting that subscribe button down below and liking this video if you like Percy Jackson and the Olympians, because that is what my lovely co-host and I will be discussing today. It's a much anticipated television series from Disney Plus. Amber, I'm going to turn to you, of course, and ask you, what is your familiarity with Percy Jackson? Have you read the books? Have you seen the movies? And how excited were you when the TV series was announced?
I'm a little bit out of order, if I'm honest, because I don't know how I didn't read these as a kid. I had a friend who did, and she told me a lot about it. But I think it was more when I was a kid, I was like, oh, well, I'm reading Harry Potter and telling my friend all about Harry Potter. She's doing the same thing with Percy Jackson, so I don't need to read it because she's reading it for me. But which is bizarre because I have a huge love of mythology of all cultures, but like hyper focused on Greek mythology, and which like you've heard in the Loki podcast and you've heard in our various other podcasts. I mentioned my love of mythology, so it just makes it's a little surprising that I just didn't intentionally read this on my own for a long time. It was around the time that I did see the movies when they came out, and I didn't love them, but I thought that they were like okay for what they were because I didn't have any of the stuff. So it's like they were okay for what they were. But now that I have read the series and I went back and watched them, yeah, they're pretty terrible. But right around the time that they were, oh yeah, I dislike the movies. Around the time that they were discussing, just in discussion about doing the Percy Jackson show, I got my fantastic boyfriend got me the entire series, the first series, just Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the first 5 books.
We love that.
I ate them up. My friend and I, we did like a 2-person book club. We read it together. She actually got stuck with a couple other books, so she hasn't finished the 4th book, Battle of the Labyrinth, but I just blazed through it. I'm pretty sure I read the Last Olympian in maybe under 48 hours because I bought it, and then like the next day, by the end of the next day, I was like, I'm done with it. I am still slowly getting. I have read the first Heroes of Olympus book, and I plan to read the other ones. I have other books in my TBR list that I need to get through, but I am very assured that I'm very much in love with the universe. I am going to read all of them if I can.
That's awesome. We love that. There's no worries about in what order you got into this Percy Jackson and Olympians universe. We're here for it. So for me, it was a little bit different. We've already kind of, put out there that I'm a little bit older than you, but it's fine. It was while my husband and I, we weren't married at the time, but we worked with kids, and the kids, the 5th graders specifically, were reading Percy Jackson, and we're kind of like, what's up with this book? Is it, what's it all about? They're like, oh, it's so cool. It's this kid who finds out he's a demigod. His father is, spoiler alerts, y'all, if in case, you haven't been here before, we do spoilers on this podcast. So here's your warning, spoilers ahead. But this demigod, he is the son of Poseidon. He's a forbidden child. He has like this quest that he has to fulfill with like 2 other people to save the world, basically. And it's so cool. It's like, it's going to be like the new Harry Potter. And I'm like, whoa. I need y'all to hold your horses.
Bold
I need you to recognize that there is nothing that's ever going to replace Harry Potter. Ever. Okay. That being said, I read the books. Love the books. I love the narration that is Percy Jackson with these books. So sassy because he's like this 12-year-old little boy. And I'm like, this is perfect because these 5th graders are eventually going to go into middle school and they're going to learn what real life is all about. And, it was just very appropriate. But I love the perspective that Percy gives throughout the whole series of Percy Jackson and the Olympian books. My favorite happens to be Battle of the Labyrinth. So I'm very, very curious to see how they're going to handle that book when hopefully this series continues. I do have some thoughts on the series. That being said, read the books about the same time the first movie was about to come out. And of course, creative liberties were given where they aged up the actors or aged up the characters, excuse me, with, older actors.
Mhm.
And, I didn't hate it. There were definitely some things in the movies that I think they did well. There were some things that I thought, what the hell are you doing? And then there were some things I'm just like, oh no. Mostly when Sea of Monsters came out. I'm like, no. Just no. What they did to Tyson, I was like, we love Tyson. Like, we wanted to see Tyson in that lovable, kind of almost childlike manner,
Mhm.
and didn't get that. I was like, this is a little disappointing. So I was okay when the movies didn't continue. Extremely excited to hear when the Disney Plus picked up the series, and Rick Riordan, the author, was going to be heavily involved. He's written the teleplays. And while I'm on that discussion of this is an 8-episode run for its first season. We're going to be covering the first 3 episodes for today's podcast. The release date was December 19th. The final finale date I believe should be January 30th of 2024. It stars Walker Scobell. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name. Whatever. I've only seen him in one other production, and that's The Adam Project, opposite of Ryan Reynolds. He was fabulous in that movie. Leah Jeffries, Aryan Simhadri, Charlie Bushnell, Dior Goodjohn, Glynn Turman, pardon me, Jason Justin
Mantzoukas.
He can say it a lot better than I can. Amber came in for the win for that one.
Well, I like him.
Right. Yeah, he's fantastic. Perfect casting. Megan Mullally, Virginia Kull, Timm Sharp, Toby Stevens, Jay Duplass, and uncredited, but I have to give him credit, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and the late Lance Reddick. We haven't seen him just yet, but I do want to just point that out there, that he is going to be part of this series, even if it's just for one season. Sadly, he did pass away earlier this year. I believe it was earlier.
It was this year. It was actually like just after they finished principal filming.
That's right. You're absolutely correct. So very, very saddened about that. I think he would have been a great Zeus to, carry on from here on out, but we will get to see Lance in that capacity. So with that being said, what are your initial thoughts so far of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians television series?
I know we differ, but it's because I actually really, really enjoy it. And I think it does really well merging the two worlds of people who have never read the series or seen the movies.
Okay.
People who have seen the movies but not read the books, and people who are purists and only read the books. I think it does well at melding all of those.
Mm-hmm.
Like I watched it with my dad. I watched it with Will. And I watched it and people who don't really know the mythology, and they're still like, oh yeah, I can completely understand and follow what's going on. But people like me, who is like intimately familiar with the mythology, I'm still like, oh, okay, here, and or I can recognize things. And I think they just did a perfect melding of it. And the things that they did change, I actually don't see a problem with that, because you can't have an exact replica of book to screen, because there's just no way that you're going to be able to cover everybody's bases. But also, I think that there's like a certain level of what to change. And like in the movie, they changed a lot of things for no reason.
Fair.
And like adding that map that was basically just like a Marauders map ripoff. Bunch of other things. Like there's a lot of things that they just did just for the sake of it, not really for any reasoning here. The things that they did change, which we'll talk about later as we go through them, it makes sense why they did it that way. And I'm loving it. I'm very, very happy with it. The kids are doing great. Like me and boyfriend, he's also said that we kind of wish there was a little bit more time at camp, but and you know, best friend Kaylee, who I was reading the series with initially, before she got sidetracked with Throne of Glass, was that it does go a little fast. But there's also only 8 episodes. They have to cover 20 chapters in 8 episodes.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm going to piggyback right off that point right here, where as someone who was very much looking forward to the series, I'm not feeling it. And maybe I'm a little bit of a snob when it comes to this. When you hear the words, it's going to be truer to the books than what the movies were. And I understand, because unlike this TV series, Rick Riordan had no attachment to the movies whatsoever, other than the fact that he was the author for the books that the movies were based on. He had no influence whatsoever. He wasn't like an executive producer or a consultant or a teleplay writer like how he is for this series. He had no involvement whatsoever with the movies.
They actually directly ignored his advice at points.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And so thus we see the obvious creative liberties that were taken. The map that you mentioned, I completely forgot about that because for one, I think visually, because as a visual learner, it kind of helps keep the audience on track. Like, okay, they're over here in New York, but they got to cross America in order to get to where Hades is held, which is in Los Angeles, which is totally appropriate. But that kind of visual aspect of it, for me at least, kind of helped. I like that. But it is completely a ripoff of the Marauders map. So that's why Percy Jackson will never be Harry Potter, people. So that being said.
Well, that's also like by the time that they actually were making the movies, the Harry Potter series was already had a few movies out. So they there's a lot. If you look into it, there's a lot of similarities in the movie Percy Jackson that they tried to do to emulate Harry Potter. And
yeah, for sure.
And this is going to surprise you, but when I was describing Percy Jackson before the premiere to my sister, when I visited for the holiday, I even said, like, if I had read Percy Jackson before Harry Potter, I genuinely don't know which one I would love more.
That's fair.
Because I think it's also because, like, I love the Harry Potter movies. We already covered all of those. We know how I feel about that. But I think what was the phrase I used? Okay, what I used to describe it to my sister was, there are moments and times when reading Harry Potter where it's kind of a stretch to think that an 11 or 12-year-old boy would do or say or think that. Because it is told in third person Harry.
It is.
So, like, there are times where, like, when now that I'm an adult and rereading the series, I'm like, okay, this was written by like a 30-something-year-old woman. Like, I can tell.
Yeah.
But reading Percy Jackson, Uncle Rick had like a lot of, for one, he remembers vividly being a teenage boy, and 2, he also was a middle school teacher, so he was around that age group all the time. And the sound of Percy's first person, I guess, inner monologue just seemed so naturally like, yeah, I can believe that this is a 12 and then later on 13, 14, whatever. I can believe that this kid is the actual age he is in the book. Right. Because his decisions, his thought process, how he thinks about things makes so much sense for his age.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah. So, like, that for me, I can totally see it. And, like, there are times where I love Harry, because Harry is my favorite character in Harry Potter. But there are times where I do laugh at him, and they sadly took a lot of those moments out of the movies. But there were times where I literally had to put Percy Jackson down because I was laughing too hard to continue reading.
Oh, yeah. No, I 100% get that.
It's just, And I think the sassy levels, I think Walker is the perfect kid to play Percy. Because not only is he a fan, but he, like, because I saw him in the Adam Project, and I thought he was did really well as showing like a young
So
Adam, Ryan Reynolds, like playing young Adam, young Ryan Reynolds. Like you can see it.
Yeah.
Like I could totally believe that kid is going to grow up to be Ryan Reynolds. But
100%. 100%.
The comedic timing, yeah, and I think he captures sassy Percy very well.
I do agree with that. However, kind of, so I'm going to go back to my original thought process of because you're cramming one book into 8 episodes. That's a tall order. It's a very tall order. The first episode alone, as I look at my notes, we're covering basically the first 4 chapters of The Lightning Thief. And it's very fast paced. There's no real breathing room for the audience to really absorb the information that's being given to us, right? What I draw issue with are a couple of things, of course. Mainly it's the pacing of it. I feel like what you said with Will, there wasn't a lot of time at camp. It was kind of like he arrives at camp, he, boom, he's at camp for like 5 seconds. He is identified by his father, Poseidon, after captured the flag in the second episode. And then it's like, oh, by the way, we're going to offer you a quest. What? Like, no, that's just that you don't have enough time to absorb the fact to be in Percy's shoes, because you're on this journey with Percy. He's learning about himself, his true self, right? That he is a demigod. The reason for his dyslexia and ADHD are hardwired into him because it's like survival skills, it's battle, tactics. It's he's hardwired for reading ancient Greek as opposed to reading, English, let's say, right? And you just don't really get that. You don't really understand that. And I'm trying to look at it from the perspective of a non-book reader, non-movie watcher from the first time this was adapted, right? Yeah. I'm trying to look at it as someone who, may have a young child who's of age, and it's like, oh, there's this, new show coming out, deals with Greek mythology. You're about the same age. Hey, let's watch it. And it's just going by too fast. I'm like, I look at John, John, my husband, he teaches 5th grade, and we're just kind of there like, what is happening? And then we're pointing out that didn't happen. Why is this happening this way? And so again, I'm going to sound like a snob. When you say this TV series is going to be truer to the book than the movie was, you better deliver. Because I felt personally with this latest episode, it was a complete rewrite of the chapter where we meet Medusa. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But I draw issue, like I said, with pacing. I draw issue with the fact that we don't have enough breathing room. I don't see the chemistry that is supposed to be among the 3. And granted, this is still very introductory, of course. Percy meeting Annabeth. The only person I actually really like out of the trio right now is Grover. I feel like Grover is the only one that has some sort of range with emotions, inflection. The other 2 are just deadpan to me, which is really tough for me to say about Walker because the fact that I loved him so much in the Adam Project. But he was also working opposite of Ryan Reynolds. When you work with someone who just has that kind of chemistry and just has that aura about them, you can bounce. You can feed off that energy and give it right back, right? I just don't see the chemistry right now amongst the 3. Walker to me is very deadpan. Like I don't hear that sassiness out of him. He's just kind of like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, at least in my opinion, he is. Annabeth, we're not even going to go into that discussion about people having a cow over her casting. If Leah Jeffries as an actress can perform the role, kudos to her. I don't give a crap about her being book accurate to that point, like, because the same argument can be made for, let's say, Hermione. You know, in the book, it wasn't openly what's the word I'm looking for? Definitive that Hermione was of a certain race or not. You see what I'm saying? So when the cursed child came out and adult Hermione was cast as a Black woman, people had a cow about that too. And I'm like, people, I need y'all to like look past that. If the actor can perform, let the actor perform. That being said, with Leah, I don't see Annabeth Chase. I see a very deadpan kind of performance, like off to the side, just kind of like watching. And it's like, oh, I knew that was going to happen. Like, or, you know, she pushes him into the water. Like, oh, I knew it. It's like, shut up. No, you did not. Like, that's not Annabeth. That is not Annabeth. The only person that I like is Grover.
I like them both because, and I hard disagree with you.
That's okay.
It's we are reading, like, as we do read the book in Percy and his point of view, and I can be a lot funnier in my brain than I am in person. And I think Walker's doing a fantastic job with his I guess comedic timing, but also just I think he's doing great. Yes, the Aryan who's playing Grover, phenomenal. I love that kid. But Percy is brand new to this world, so it kind of makes sense for him to be a little discombobulated and he has the attitude, which does persist with Percy, and he also has the clear I don't want to say disdain, but the clear pay your child support behavior to all of the gods that he has throughout the series. Like, he clearly, you can see it in him already. And that's kind of what I like. And some other little comments too, like when Mr. D like said, oh yeah, he's already here, but he's already like said Peter Johnson like twice instead of Percy Jackson. He's like, oh yeah, here, I already met him or whatever. And Percy's like, do you? Like,
see, that's like fine. Yes, that like, was okay. That's great.
There's litters of them. There's so many different things. And like, I am impertinent in Medusa episode. Like, I see it in Walker. And once he gets more comfortable, that's going to happen. And Annabeth, I love her because I don't see her being cold. I see her being calculating, which she is a daughter of Athena. That's kind of ingrained in her. I see her being calculating. I see her sitting there and watching, and like, and they didn't get along in the beginning. They very much didn't, because she was very like, yeah, she's very much just like, because of the Athens, Athena, Poseidon debacle, our parents don't like each other, so I don't like you. That's kind of the behavior and energy she gave off at first. And she is more calculating, but also like, it seems to me like she's a 12-year-old kid who desperately wants to go on her first quest. And like Luke explained, she watches everybody to see if this is going to be her opportunity, her ticket out of here. She watches them. I think it makes complete sense that she was watching him. For her to be the one to push him, and be like, I knew it. I mean, that depends on how calculating she was. He literally saw him manipulate water for that. And if she heard about if Chiron or Grover or anybody mentioned what happened with at Nancy Academy with the fountain, like, if it's not hard to put together. There are other water deities in Greek mythology, but we don't really know about them. So it's kind of easy to narrow it down. So I'm not, she saw the bathroom debacle. I'm not surprised that that's kind of the conclusion she came to. And because I also see her as very much just like, oh yeah, she's a little bit closed off at first, but also she doesn't know these people yet. Well, she knows Grover, but she doesn't know Percy. They've known each other at maximum like 48 hours. like before they have to
She
go on a trip together.
she doesn't know him, but she's looking out for the one that's gonna get her on the quest. So it's just kind of like you're using people, and that's not a good look. Like,
It's
you see what I'm
calculating.
saying?
I don't see it as not a good look. I see it as calculating. She has a goal. She wants to get to it, and her mother is the tactile specialist and strategic specialist of the Olympians. I don't see it as a bad thing. I see it. Yeah, she was calculating. She is like, I can see it, but I don't see it as a bad thing.
Well, and we do, from what we know in the books, at least, again, everyone, spoilers, Annabeth's hubris is basically her Achilles heel. Like, that much is understood. And I think by establishing that early on,
Yes.
because that's not something that was really established in the books, sorry, in the movies, I think we're kind of getting that glimpse of it here because, and you mentioned Luke. Luke talked to Percy as he entered camp, and as you know, Percy was an unclaimed demigod, so he naturally goes to the Hermes cabin because Hermes is, you know, the god of travelers and what have you. So everyone's welcome, right? Luke, who is the counselor for the Hermes cabin, is very welcoming to Percy. But this is also another casting. I'm just like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling this portrayal of Luke. I don't get that whole like, oh, he's really like, yeah, I say welcoming because, you know, he did welcome Percy to the cabin, but just being a friend, quote unquote, to Percy, I'm not feeling it. I'm not seeing it. Like, yeah, he talks to Percy. He kind of like shows him around camp, and or not really shows him around camp, but it's like, oh, let's find out what you're good at, which was great. That was something we didn't get to see in the movies, which I loved in the book. You know, we saw him attempt to do archery, terrible at it. We saw him attempt to do blacksmith, terrible. You know, but what I wanted to see for sure was Luke take on Percy in the arena, because that's where you did see Percy excel with the sword,
Yes.
right? And we didn't get that. Like you said earlier, wasn't enough time at camp. Yes, we got the capture the flag moment, which, you know, there was actually I think one or two. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've read the first book, but we did get the capture the flag moment, which was, you know, which was great. But with Luke, I am, because we know what's going to happen later on in the story, I just don't see that personality. I don't see that established sort of like, oh yeah, I'm your friend, I'm here for you kind of thing. Unlike the movie. This is where actually I like the movie Luke version better than I do with this television series. What are your thoughts on Luke?
Um, Again, I like him. I think it's more just I never, even in the book, I didn't really see him as being a friend to Percy. I saw him as he is Percy for a time was an unclaimed in the Hermes cabin. This is the Hermes cabin leader. So it's like more of a friendly supervisor position. Like, hey, I'm the older cool kid. I'm going to teach you things. Yeah, cool, but we're also not outpouring our deepest, darkest secrets here. Like, we can talk, we can chat, we can have casual, like, information. We can give each other little backstories about each other, like he does with Annabeth, explaining about him, Annabeth, and Thalia. But I didn't ever really see him as, I saw him as like this cool guy that Percy can kind of look up to and be like, oh, this guy is cool. This guy is like, he's the cabin leader. That's kind of what I want to do. Like, I feel comfortable in this place. I feel like I actually might have a place here. I'm making friends here, actual friends for the first time in my life. I feel like I can actually have a spot here. That's what I would want to be. Like, I think that's kind of, to me, that's how I viewed him in the book before, what shall come to pass.
Right.
But what is kind of fun is I've seen so many videos and posts about people who have not seen the movies or read the books, and they are in love with Luke. They're like, oh, he is so sweet. He's a gentleman among boys. Like, it's just like people are loving Luke and everyone's just like, oh no.
Oh,
Yeah.
people prepared to have your hearts broken. You
Sweet
poor,
summer child.
sweet summer child. Thank you. That was totally unplanned. Yeah. So, and I only bring this up because it plays an important role when it comes to Percy's prophecy, which, by the way, why the hell did the prophecy emerge as Gabe? Okay, we're gonna backtrack.
I'm pretty sure it did.
No, it did. Okay, we're gonna backtrack because we are gonna kind of talk about each episode, maybe not so greatly in depth, but episode 1 entitled I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher, which, by the way, if you hate algebra as much as I did growing up, it's perfectly fine. I would want to vaporize my pre-algebra teacher as well. That being said, some things that I really did not like from that first episode, I thought little baby tiny Percy was adorable. I think he had a lot more personality than what we're seeing with, preteen Percy, but that's just me. Why is Gabe more of a bum than like this asshole that we read about in the books? And I understand we want to empower like women having a voice and, standing up for who they are and what have you. But with that being said, it really changes the plot of Sally Jackson, Percy's mom, in my opinion, because how she stood up to Gabe when he's all like coming to the kitchen and she's telling him, hey, we're gonna take the car, we're gonna go to the beach at the cabin, what have you, and he wants to argue with her, but she like kind of cuts him off, and I'm like, wait a minute, like this did not happen at all in the book. And I'm not saying like women need to be submissive to the people that they're with, especially with people that are assholes like Gabe. We should understand at this point that the reason that Sally is with Gabe is because his odor masked Percy's scent to the monsters, right? In the mythological world, right? So that's the only reason why she was with him. But to me, it changes her character arc by making her more empowered, by her going to Hades and this and that. It's like she comes back and she kicks him out. Spoilers, guys. She kicks him out, and I don't know. I just feel like this changes it. Or
she didn't kick him out. She killed him.
Well, but you understand what I'm saying, it just changes it for some reason to me. It's like it's not as impactful.
I didn't like it at first, but as I was like, I did rewatch it multiple times. Okay. I think what kind of got to me was that thinking that there are other forms of abuse than violence. He was controlling about the car. She just like, hey, like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, or whatever. And he was trying to be like, oh, why am I allowing this? Like that. And also he uses her finances for his gambling. She like,
but you wouldn't know that he's gambling because he's just sitting on the recliner, like watching television. Like
that's true, but Percy says it.
Yes, but it's not nearly as impactful. Unlike in the movie, when we first meet Gabe in the movie, he's there playing poker with his friends, bossing Sally around. So you really get that visualization and that understanding that he is very controlling. He is abusive in that sense, and he's just a bum, for lack of a better term. Yeah, this dude is just like, you're just lazy,
And I mean, I saw him. At first, I didn't like it. Like I said, the first time I watched it, I was like, this doesn't seem like Gabe. He's too lenient to be Gabe.
Yes.
But watching it more times, like there's just like the subtle, like how he, right the second that Percy walked in the door, he's criticizing him and like, I guess, degrading him. And like, that's like just 5 seconds of Percy walking in the door.
Yeah.
Sally has to live with that. And also he is controlling of the finances. He's controlling of the he's control, and he even said, like Percy said, like she's the one who has a job. She's so like you can infer from what Percy is saying that he is playing poker, he is gambling with his mother Sally's money, and then he's also controlling about the car and everything else. Like he just seems, and also he's answering her phone for her. He's like, where are you going? Why are you doing that? Like he just seems controlling in that way. And there are different levels and hierarchies to abuse that, yeah, for, can you not focus? Sorry, kitty cat. If I don't know if that picked up on the audio, but there was a kitty cat in front of a mic.
She wants to weigh in on this topic at hand.
Yeah. There's different levels of that. And I think Percy is a very strong, sassy boy. And
we love our sassy boys.
Yeah, but like in the book, we kind of like learn that he does get that from Sally.
Yes.
But I feel like in the movies and things, we didn't really like, they did too hard. They hit it too hard on it to where it's like a sassy boy like Percy doesn't seem like it makes much sense coming out of that environment, being raised in that environment.
Yeah.
But here, where she did kind of say, like, she did a hard line, like, yeah, there was a little bit of pushback, but
I mean, she straight up yelled at him, and she's like, well, not if you're going to talk to me that way. I know. I mean, okay.
It's just, I think there's like, watching it multiple times and taking another look at it, I just like, yeah, it's not the same level that we thought, but hey, I can perfectly see this Sally being the one that raised this Percy. Okay. It makes perfect sense in line with that, with how she did stand up to him and how he was behaving, like from jump, and like even from the dialogue, because the dialogue didn't feel forced. That's one thing that I do like, is that I don't feel like the dialogue felt static.
In that moment, you're right. Yeah, it definitely was not static. Yeah.
It didn't feel static. So it's like we're able to infer so many things about I don't even know Smelly Gabe's last name. Whatever. Gabe and Sally's like household.
Ugliano?
Yeah, Ugliano.
Ugliano. Yeah.
Yeah, because it looks like ugly. Yeah. Ugliano, Jackson household. We don't really know about that, but we were able to learn so much just from that very casual dialogue, that there's gambling involved, that he basically stays at home gambling online all the time instead of having a job, and Sally's working the job. And like he's answering her phone for her. He's doing all of the money things. It's just, there's so much that you can get about that lifestyle in just that discussions, which I think with the pacing that we have, it works.
I think we're gonna have to agree to disagree. That's okay.
On everything, okay. Apparently, it's fine.
Probably this, and it's just really it's hard for me to, talk about this in a way, just because of the fact that I love the books. I absolutely love the books. The movies were fine for what they were when they first came out, and then again, when this television series was announced and the author is involved, and it was going to be a lot truer to the books, and I'm like, me personally, I'm just not seeing it. And maybe I have a tall order when it comes to that promise of it's going to be true to the books. Then I want it to be exactly like to the freaking T, like the books. That's just me. That being said, this also makes me very worried for the Harry Potter television series that's going to happen in years to come. Again, tall order. If you're don't overpromise and then undersell people, like, just don't. Going back even further on this first episode to the very beginning, I was very happy to actually see Percy at Yancey Academy. We actually got to see Nancy, whatever her face name, Boba Fett. Not Boba Fett.
Boba Fett. It is
Boba Fett. Oh, it's like it almost sounds like Boba Fett. That's right.
It does.
That being said, we actually got to see her, which was great because she is his like nemesis, right, during his time at Yancey. I really did appreciate just kind of like the lead up to Percy in that moment. Again, little baby Percy, he's like, I weird things were happening. He's seeing weird things, and as he got older, those weird things started becoming a little bit more and more. We meet Grover. They brought in the mythic, I can't remember what they're called, but the mytho magic cards, which is a great nod to another character that we'll eventually get to see, hopefully, if the series continues. Not going to talk about that here and now, but these little introductions here and there I think was really, really awesome. The problem I have with the field trip to the museum, where the pre-algebra teacher, Mrs. Dodds, is going to turn into her true self, which is that of oh god, a harpy, not a harpy,
a fury.
A fury. The way that it happened, where it was outside for like the world to see, and no one seeing her change into her true form, and that could be explained by the mist, but in that moment you don't understand that. It's just kind of like, that's not what happened in the book. It happened like it did in the movie. She took him away in a separate room. Mr. Brunner came in and, threw the pin and what have you. That didn't happen at all. Okay. I mean, they changed that whole sequence altogether. To me, it was just very strange. I didn't care for it. The other thing I didn't particularly care for either was what happened with the Minotaur. Lots of talking between Sally and Grover.
Yeah.
Like that whole promise, like, promise me you're going to, protect him, take care. Like, there is a Minotaur. Also, it wasn't determined it was a Minotaur until much later on during in the chapter. It's kind of like they're in the car, they hear a roar, turn around. Oh, look, it's a Minotaur that's chasing us. By the way, he's wearing underwear. What?
Yeah, that was a little goofy. As for the scenes, it's a lot of it comes to the pacing, and
yeah,
I actually am totally fine with the Mrs. Dodds Fury fiasco, because I think in the book we have the time, we have the space to, she took, like, a teacher needs to talk to you in another room, that makes sense or whatever, but we are 5 minutes into the show, we can't really get into that and that whole relationship. We have Percy's, I guess, monologuing, but he can't really give us all of that. Mrs. Dodds always gives me a hard time, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of inferred from how she was like, you will behave yourself, whatever, after his little flashback with his mom. But so I think being out in the open, it kind of shows to people who are not familiar with the books and don't know what the mist is, it leaves us wondering, why didn't anyone see that? And then when we get that explanation of the mist, it changes how people perceive things. It's like, oh, that makes sense.
But I feel like that was explained far too quickly for even the non-book reader and the non-movie watcher to understand what that is and how that plays into this world that we're now immersed in. The other thing too, because Grover is the one who explains about the mist, him getting Percy kicked out of the school, that did not happen at all in the book. By the way, real quick, I just want to throw in a fun little trivia. You do get to see the author Rick Riordan appear in that scene with the headmaster or the dean, sitting opposite from Mr. Brunner when Percy and Grover are being questioned about the events of the field trip, which I thought that was just a cute little nod, allow him to be a part of everything. But that whole thing did not happen because Grover and Percy are supposed to be tight. They're supposed to be best friends. Obviously, Grover is Percy's protector. We don't know that at this moment, but it's dude just totally spoke against his best friend. And I'm like, bye, peace out, bye. I don't want anything to do with you. Go away.
Percy did do that. When he got back to the cabin, he's like, I don't want you around here right now. Why are you here? I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to hear it. He at first didn't want to hear it, but then
that was more because of what happened with his mom. That wasn't because of him getting kicked out. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm going based
No,
on
it's
what the
like,
book was.
yeah, but I think it makes sense because they did explain it. He's like, I had to get you kicked out because things were circling in on you. I think that makes perfect sense.
It
It
does.
makes
It's just it's not true to the book. Is my point.
I know, but I hate to break it to you, friend, but nothing is going to be perfect for you.
Make it perfect.
It's not going to be perfect for you. And I
I know.
am promising you this right now. Harry Potter's not going to be perfect for you.
Oh, I know. That's
It
why I'm
won't
not gonna
be.
watch it.
Like, none of these are going to fit exactly your point of view, but also you are the reader. Rick was greenlighting all of this.
Oh yeah, no, I'm
He's
fully aware of that.
like
Yeah.
he and like and when we get down to the Medusa thing, like I have things to say, and I have like a Variety article from an interview with Rick and his wife Becky. Like I have so many things about like why it makes beautiful, perfect, 100,000% sense why they changed the Medusa scenes. I love the changes that they made to the Medusa scenes, but it is different from the books. And but Rick is like he said from the get-go, even that he's like, yes, I am more involved, but this is giving me the space to change things that I wish I could go back and change. We don't know to the extent of what. So there are things that the original creator is like, hey, I wish I could go back and change that. So he kind of, and if he's greenlighting everything, I'm assuming that this is just his vision now.
No, that much is understood. It's just it's that whole like I took it to a literal sense. It's going to be truer to the books, and then we're getting rewrites of things, and I understand him saying this is giving me this creative space to elaborate, change, whatever. It doesn't, whatever the case may be, adapt. And that's fine, but it's just again, it's like when you say it's going to be something and then you're like, oh, but by the way, I'm also going to change things. Then don't say it's going to be true to the books. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just say it's
so. I think what you're
good.
Well, like another thing is that you're also. They said it's going to be truer to the books, not true to the books. Truer to the books.
That's fair.
It's that fair. It's going to be more. It's more accurate than the movies. Like I think I understand that you are very much taking that literally.
Yeah.
But you're
like I said, I'm going to be a snob.
You're setting yourself up for disappointment because you have to pay attention to that. It's truer to the books than the movies, and you can't just take half of a quote. You can't just take half of a quote.
Just don't like the error. Anyway, moving on. So at the conclusion of episode 1, we sadly, quote, lose Sally Jackson to the Minotaur. Percy channels his inner Greek demigod self, defeats the Minotaur. Spoils of war, he has the Minotaur horn, which I think that was a great nod, obviously, to the book, because we didn't get to see that in the movie at all. So love that. Love these little things that they are incorporating into this television series, which leads me to episode 2, which is entitled I Become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. Also, love the fact that they're naming these episodes after chapters from the book, which I think is staying true to like that whole Percy POV. It's wonderful. I love that, like, for sure. Wish we had so much more time at Camp Half-Blood. I do love when we first meet Annabeth, or not first meet Annabeth, but during Capture the Flag, she puts on the Yankees ball cap and goes invincible. Didn't get that at all in the movies, so I thought that was a wonderful addition. I say addition, but a wonderful way to, just stay truer to the book.
I loved meeting Mr. D.
Oh yeah.
Because Dionysus is one of my favorite gods. Like,
oh boy.
One of them. Because again, I'm intimately familiar with the mythology. Right. I have opinions about the gods.
I'm sure you do.
Oh yeah, I am not getting into it. But I love Mr. D is a little bit more like of a friendly jerk than I kind of imagined him to be.
Yeah.
But I'm not mad about it. And so seeing Jason Mantzoukas playing him, perfect casting.
Yes.
I was cracking up at like everything he said when he's like, I can help you with that, son.
Oh.
It was so
Cringe.
funny. And he has the vibes. He has the vibes. I can't.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think that was a great casting. So Jason Mantzoukas is playing Mr. D, or Dionysus, aka the camp director for Camp Half-Blood. Also failed to mention that it is Glynn Turman who plays Mr. Brunner / Chiron. Chiron, who is the trainer of most of the well-known heroes from, Greek mythology.
Pretty much everyone.
Pretty much everyone, yeah. He is also a centaur, which is masked by the mist as he is in the wheelchair, right? So, I'm a little partial to Pierce Brosnan from the movies or the first movie at least, because I just, he's nice to look at. He definitely kind of gives me that very old school, like I used to teach and train the best of the best and that kind of thing.
I got Dumbledore vibes from him in the movies and I hated it.
Oh, we're not gonna go.
I really do see in the show, I can believe that this guy trained Achilles. I can believe that this guy trained everyone. Like again, because I'm so familiar with the myths, I can believe that this guy is mythical Chiron the centaur, the trainer of heroes. Yes. I can imagine that.
He's got a lot of wisdom to offer.
In the movies, I didn't see it. I just saw him as just Dumbledore and a horse. I didn't get it.
I just saw him as James Bond, part horse, just nice to look at.
No.
That's funny.
But Chiron in the show, what's really cool is he's actually like, he has experience with horses. Like he was a horse trainer, and he's like, so you can see that he's actually physically on a horse throughout all of those scenes. Like he's on a horse, and they actually had to digital edit that. So it's, instead of just having like CGI from the waist down, he's literally on a horse, guys. Like
that's amazing.
That I liked.
That's really cool. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I like him much better than the movie. I'm sorry.
No, and that's fine.
Vibes.
That's okay. That's perfectly fine. One other thing from this episode that I actually did appreciate, although they didn't delve a lot into it, is seeing the council for the satyrs, a council of what is it called? The council,
the Cloven Council.
And because it is revealed, of course, at the end of episode 1 that Grover is a satyr. He is Percy's protector. He is kind of in a bit of a jam, obviously with the events that happened at the end of the first episode. Percy doesn't really want to be around Grover in this episode, but Grover has to go before the council to share, the events that happened and whatnot. At the end of this episode, though, when Percy has, gone through camp, he's been more or less welcomed in the Hermes cabin. He's trying to navigate his way through Camp Half-Blood, go through Capture the Flag. He is claimed by Poseidon at the end of Capture the Flag. Hoorah. He gets his own cabin. By the way, I just have to insert this in here. I really appreciate that the cabins actually have their own identity to the gods and are in the U shape like they should be as described in the book. Something that we did not get at all in the movie. The only real cabin that we really saw was basically that of Percy's, which, kind of looked more like a beach house or a shack, that kind of thing. It's kind of, kind of on point. This one's a little bit more majestic looking, even though it has the blues. It's got, a lot of water theme, what have you, as
sea creature skeletons.
Exactly, as it should. But it still is a little too pretty for my taste, personally, but it's fine. I do appreciate
it's been empty for so long.
That's fair. But It's very grandiose. But I do
Yeah.
love that element with the cabins and them being in the U-shaped form. Um,
Mhm.
but at the very end of episode 2, and I am getting a little ahead of myself. We are going to talk about why Percy is named Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. Um, at the very end of the episode, with Percy in front of Chiron and Mr. D, they're giving him this quest. They're basically just telling him everything, right? You have been accused of stealing Zeus's master bolt. Okay, where the hell did that come from? We're just going to ignore that. Because you're
Yeah.
you're one of the big 3. You're a child of the big 3, excuse me. You're a forbidden child. You are most likely one to have stolen it. Then Grover comes swooping in. He's all like, by the way, your mom's not dead. She was just captured by Hades. And it's just like, what? Like, what is happening? And this is where, for me, it goes back to that. I understand they're trying to cram a 20
Yeah.
chapter book into 8 episodes, but it's like, give it breathing room. Give it breathing room. Like,
Yeah.
I feel personally that the episode should have ended where Percy had been claimed, and then you let that breathe. He goes, next episode would be he's at camp, he's trying to figure out, okay, I have daddy issues and what have you, and trying to, sort through all that. And then it's like, Percy, we have this quest for you. You see what I'm saying? Like, give it a little bit of
Yeah.
breathing room, right? Like, absorb that. Now it's like, okay, you're at camp, boom. You do capture the flag, boom. You've been claimed by Poseidon, boom. You have to go on this quest now, boom. I'm like, this is no. This is no. So
Yeah. I can see
your
it.
your thoughts on Grover spilling the beans that Dionysus and Chiron did not want him to spill. Like, that doesn't put them in a very good position of view, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Kind of bad.
Yeah, I think Chiron is throughout the entire Percy Jackson series. He is very much. I'm thinking of how to word it. He's the best plot protector. He is the guardian of the plot, because and in some ways, because again, because of the mythology, I can kind of see it. He's seen thousands upon thousands of demigods.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been training them at not just at Camp Half Blood, but for the
Throughout
past
history.
3,000 plus years,
Yeah.
3,000-ish years, he's been training heroes, and he's had to see a lot of them die from different things. So Chiron is pretty much a very solid gatekeeper of information throughout the entire series. But
He's better than Dumbledore. I'll put it that way.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like, he's better than Dumbledore. Dumbledore did it for
Selfish reasons.
God knows the reasons. But Chiron, he does it, and to me, and it might just be my assumptions, or I guess my fan canon or whatever, but he's seen so many of his demigods die that he's like, okay, don't reveal that piece of information because that was the fatal flaw last time. Okay, don't do this because that's what happened last time and they died. Don't do this because that's what happened and then they died. And
don't tell Percy his only parent that he's ever really known and loved is actually alive.
Yeah. Well, it does sound bad, but it's also like, they need to get the Master Bolt back. They need all of this to happen. They need all of that to happen. And what does end up happening, Percy's going to be so single-minded in saving Sally that he does not care about the quest, which that's the entire world will go into war if they don't do the quest. So even though it sucks, but I kind of see it as more of like, he's kind of trying to look for the entire world's best interest. It does suck. It does suck.
Just not a good look, my dude. Like,
it isn't.
Not a good look for my guy.
but it's better than Dumbledore.
We're not even going to talk about that on this pod.
Nope.
Going to the main reason of why this episode is entitled I Become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom has a lot to do with a camper by the name of Clarice LaRue, who is played by Dior Goodjohn. Now, this is another casting that I think they did extremely well with. Granted, she doesn't have the same appearance as described in the books, but man, does she have the personality. She's got that attitude. She's got that, like, she's got her spear. For those of you who are not familiar with Clarice LaRue, she is a daughter of Aries,
from Arizona.
Oh goodness, you're adorable.
She's from
You're
Phoenix.
Right. She is. You're right. You're absolutely right. So Arizona represent. But she is the daughter of the god of war, basically. Like, you know, she's a force to be reckoned with. She doesn't care for Percy from the get-go because, you know, the story of him defeating the Minotaur is going around. She's like, there's no way, basically. Like, there's no way that this kid who doesn't know anything about anything could have done this. He's a liar. I'm going to make him say that he made it all up. Because to these kids, as it's something that Luke does describe to Percy, glory is something that is extremely important when it comes down to Greek mythology, right?
Yes.
Every hero wants glory. Every hero wants their name to be known and remembered and shared, right? So this also goes once again back to the fatal flaw that is Annabeth, spoiler, her hubris. So, you know, there's always going to be something. And for Clarice, you know, she just doesn't want to be upstaged by any means, right? From the get-go, when she meets Percy, you know, bumps into him, typical, you know, bully type mannerism. But she really gets a mouthful, if you will, a mouthful of toilet water when she goes and tries to forcefully get Percy to quote confess that he made up the story about the Minotaur when he's approaching the camp border. And
I'm gonna cure your imposter syndrome, so help me.
Oh my God. He's like, hold my beer, or hold my blue Coke. So yes. Anyway, but yeah, because Percy at this moment, he's only manipulated water one other time. This was during the exchange with Nancy when they were at the field trip. You know, she's trying to bully him, and without really meaning to, he kind of like uses his Poseidon powers, if you will, to forcefully push Nancy into the fountain. And so the water gives Percy powers, obviously. This is also done in this scene where Clarice and two others are trying to give Percy a swirly. And if you're not familiar what a swirly is, it's basically
good for you.
You were not bullied in school. It basically is forcefully putting someone's head into the toilet and then flushing it numerous times, therefore swirly. But Percy, being who he is, even though he doesn't know it, he is able to you know, get out of that jam. He basically causes the toilets to explode. Water crashes down on the Aries kids, including Clarice, who is just like, are you? She's pissed, and it's like, yeah, you're messing with the sea god's son. Like, what? Hello. Of course, no one knows at this moment, but yeah, you know, that scene I think played out very well.
It did.
Yeah. I think it's great that they decided to name the episode title that, and actually
one of the best named chapters of the series.
Oh God,
series.
It's so good. It's so good. And then actually, you know, execute that scene very well, because I remember reading that chapter when I first read the books, and again, I was in my adulthood by the time these books were popular and whatnot. But they were still very entertaining, and it captures you with that sort of title of I become Supreme Lord of the bathroom. It's like, excuse you, what? Like, why? Like, why is that something to be Supreme Lord over anyway? But
But it's so funny.
it is very funny. It is very funny. That was extremely well done. This being said, series of thoughts. We're at camp. I love the details of all the kids wearing the necklaces. Like the necklaces,
Yes.
they have their beads. You know, at the end of the year, they'll get a bead that's basically like the big thing that happened for their year at camp. And it's just, you know, it's not really an important detail. It's just a detail I absolutely love.
Well,
Because
even Percy has just a plain string too,
he's just got the
because he
string.
hasn't been there yet.
Exactly. So I love that. Absolutely love that little detail. So there's things here and there that, you know, yes, I do love things from this show. I'm just very critical right now. I probably will be. Sorry, people. But it's because I love the books, you know, and I want the series to be done as perfect as possible, you know, but you know, things can change and obviously have been changed. But that being said, Amber, is there anything from episode 2 that you want to point out before we move into episode 3? Because I know you've got feelings about episode 3.
I just little thing is that they didn't say exactly that Clarissa's spear was a gift from her father.
Oh yes,
but you can still tell it's very important to her even before, you know, it snaps in the screen. You can tell even before that because like when she turned it on. I don't know.
activated it.
Yeah, whatever.
Make it go light red.
Yeah, when she did that, like just the look on Dior's face, like of just like, I love this thing. This thing, like it was just, and just it was like a cat and a mouse as they were like, as she was like coming after Percy. I loved her performance, and I think like she perfectly encapsulated a kid of Aries. Like it made so much sense, 100%. And I'm so excited for it.
100%.
So like that is one thing. Like I can't like they didn't mention it, but they also didn't really have to. And I think that was like a good visual storytelling thing, you know, like they're able to like, we're able to see it in her face and her like gut-wrenching scream when it snapped. Like Walker said in an interview that in that scene, the fear of on his face was genuine because he genuinely thought she was going to beat him up. Because he was so like, if you rewatch that scene, the fear on Walker Scobell's face is genuine.
The fear of the gods.
Lord. He was genuinely thought that Dior was going to like beat the hell out of him.
Oh man, I would be too. Listen, she plays the role well, and even if it's not understood by the audience that the spear is a gift from her father, the spear is important regardless. It's quite the weapon when it comes down to being a demigod of a demigod or a child of a Greek god. You know, spears were a huge thing, you know, in battles, obviously. So that being said, next to Grover, I think she is one of my favorite castings thus far. How much we'll get to see of her from this point on is probably going to be slim to none. But that being said, she left quite an impression on me, and I can't wait to see what she will bring to the table when it comes down to season 2, because she will have a bigger role when it comes down to Sea of Monsters, which is the second book in this series. Let's move on to episode 3. Episode 3, which is entitled We Visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. Now, this episode does hold the title from chapter 11 of the book, which is The Lightning Thief, which is part of the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. But it does involve events from chapters 9, 10, and 11. So this is the episode where the 3 kids come together, Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. They're about to go on their quest, right? They're going to leave camp. They're going to try and find this master bolt, retrieve it from Hades, because it's already been identified that Hades has the bolt. Okay, Percy also knows that his mother is in Hades with Hades. So there's that. But there's going to be some trouble along the way. Let's start off with the bus scene when the kids are on the bus.
I really quick want to talk about, I'm really happy at how they're addressing Thalia.
Yes, they
Because
are
I
addressing her.
think
You're right.
I like how, because even in episode 2, Luke gave a little bit explanation about like him, Annabeth, and Thalia's history, and then she really is gonna miss that tree, huh? We get more of that story, and then like we find out that Grover was their protector. So we're getting like, I think, even though the pacing for the overall show feels rushed, I think the pacing of Thalia's involvement is actually really nice. I'm liking it because it feels a little bit unnatural that we're learning this information at that time.
This is where it actually works because of the fact that she at this point does not have a significant role to play.
Yes.
You get the little Easter eggs here and there because it's going to be something that's going to play out in the future. This is fine. I've got no problem with them talking about Thalia here and there. I have a hard time just listening to the name Thalia because at the end of Sea of Monsters in the movie, it was I'm Talia, and I'm like, I can get behind that. So it's just weird that there's great emphasis on the TH Thalia, and I'm like, this just doesn't sound right. Anyway, that's beside the point.
I because I listened to a Percy Jackson podcast, and they've actually like gone back and forth, and they've actually talked to people who are named with the exact same spelling, and other people who and most of them just don't care. They're like, yeah, I was like, my name is spelled Thalia, but people always pronounce it Talia. So, but if you pronounce it Thalia, I don't care. Like, most of them just don't really seem to matter.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't really. I didn't really care.
No, it's fine. It's just one of those things. Like, it just sounds weird because I'm just used to hearing it from the movie, and it's whatever. It's fine. It's fine. But going to the scene where the kids are traveling on the bus, they make a pit stop, and between Annabeth and Percy, this is where you're kind of seeing, who's going to be the more dominant, who's going to be the more bossy. You kind of maybe start seeing that little development between the two of them in this moment of, okay, Annabeth saying to everyone, you stay here, I'm going to go get snacks. Percy, well, I want to vote on that. No. Well, I want to vote about voting on that. No. That kind of back and forth, I can kind of get. What really annoyed me, sadly, from Grover, because he doesn't like the confrontation. He doesn't want to be the tiebreaker. He starts clapping, right? He has like this little beat, and then he starts singing this song about consensus. And I'm just like, what? Like,
they can't have him be singing Kelly, like whatever Kelly Clarkson, or
I know that
they can't have him be doing that. And also, it doesn't seem like they're having him play the reeds.
No, they're not.
It doesn't seem like it. So I thought it was just kind of like, I am personally also I don't like conflict either. So
no, I don't.
I would have been like, yeah, anything to get me out of this situation.
Yeah,
I am not a headstrong person like Annabeth or Percy. So I think I was kind of like, go ahead, Grover, do you.
To me, it was just so random. I'm like, no. Okay, fine. But maybe this is also just because I'm also almost 35, and this is like storytelling of a 12-year-old and 12, almost 13, and it's just like, kids, so annoying. Anyway,
it was kind of funny when they were leaving, though. Like Percy said that, he's like, she acts like she's in charge or whatever. Like, and when Grover said like, well, who did you think was going to be in charge?
Oh my God, yeah.
What made me laugh about that was Will actually said, he's like, I don't know, maybe you, the 24-year-old.
Like, I know, yeah. Grover said he's like, I'm actually 28 or something like that, and I'm 24. Like, okay, 24, and it's like, bro, like, then act like it, you know?
Yeah, they have
Act
a
like it.
different aging system. Like, I mean, hey, Grogu was 50 years old and was a baby. So
Oh my god. But Grogu can do no wrong, okay? Let's just
neither can Grover.
No, Grover can do wrong.
No, I love him. Nuh-uh.
That's fine. I did actually kind of appreciate Grover's explanation to Percy about, you know, how Annabeth kind of is and how kind of being 3 steps ahead with the monsters because you need to spot them before they spot you, and then you get that visual of
Yes.
Annabeth kind of anticipating someone that she thinks is maybe following her, that kind of thing. She's just on her guard, and then when she gets back on the bus, we see Mrs. Dodds again. Mrs. Dodds, who had previously been vaporized by Percy by using the pin, which I failed to mention, which is like your typical ballpoint pen with a cap that when you uncap it, it turns into a shiny sword that will take down monsters.
Riptide.
Riptide. Yes, it's not identified as such at this point, I don't think, but it's Riptide. Greek name, not even going to attempt to say it because I'm going to butcher it.
Me either, but I thought it was funny. Okay, going back really quick, a tiny little thing in episode 2, right before the capture the flag, Luke says like "let her rip" to like for his weapon, and I was literally like "rip tide."
I didn't catch that.
No, we like that. We don't know that it. Well, we know, but new viewers don't know that it's the sword is called Riptide. Yeah. So it's for him to say "let it rip" was so funny to me.
That is actually kind of funny.
Yeah, but
that's cute.
Yeah, and a lot of people were mad. I saw like a lot of posts of people who've only seen the movie who were really, really like annoyed that it wasn't a clicky pen. But it's like, this kid has ADHD. Why in the world would you give it a kid that like
a clicky?
Yeah, why would you do that? Because for one, it would just be sword pen, sword pen, sword pen, sword pen, back and forth all the time. And then for one, that's a hazard. And two, like
great.
I don't even have ADHD, and I can't stop clicking clicky pens. Like that would just be a hazard.
You're just fidgeting.
I like that it's just a grubby old looking pen because that's how it's supposed to be.
No, and you're right. Yeah, it is supposed to be. So going back to Annabeth, she gets back on the bus. She notices Mrs. Dodds and puts on her Yankees cap, which turns her invisible again in front of people. People are oblivious. They don't pay attention to things. All of them would be terrible witnesses, by the way. Annabeth is having this conversation with Mrs. Dodds, and I'm like, this didn't happen in the book.
No.
Like, and this kind of bothered me. I understood the point that was trying to be made about, the enemy trying to make a deal with one of the kids to give up Percy so that, Annabeth can move forward with her quest and get the glory and that kind of thing. Because it's already been established that glory is very important to demigods or just gods in general. And, they're trying to position it where, is she going to, turn on him because of the prophecy that had previously been uttered by Gabe, which was weird. Not going to go into great depth about that, but basically saying that one who calls them friend or calls
you'll be betrayed by someone who calls you friend.
There you go. And they'll betray you in the end, basically. And so Percy, makes his decision on Annabeth and Grover. Well, it's later revealed why, but at that moment, it's like, oh, okay, well, this is kind of positioning to maybe she will be the one who betrays Percy, right? And things transpire as they always do. Mrs. Dodds turns into her true form, Fury. The kids are trying to escape. They break open the window on the bus, evacuate everyone out of the bus. They themselves evacuate to get away from her and make their way through the woods. I actually kind of did appreciate Grover talking about how this was the same path that his Uncle Ferdinand had taken.
Yeah.
His great callback. Yeah.
And I know the scene wasn't obviously in the books, but I actually didn't mind the Mrs. Dodds thing because I think it was another way to show the non-book readers that this is that might be Annabeth's fatal flaw. Like, we aren't introduced to fatal flaws yet, but that glory, that desperate need to prove herself might be her downfall. And I think that this was kind of like a good way. And then also we see the same thing mirrored in Percy with Medusa. So it's like, I think like they were both offered two different things that would help their goals. And I think that really does well to set up their character. So yeah, it's a new scene, but I didn't mind it.
I'm just not sure if it really delivered in the sense that they were hoping. I don't know, it just kind of bothered me. But then again, a lot of things bother me. So as the trio are making their way through the woods, Grover gets a whiff hamburgers. I'm like, okay, well that's about right, because Auntie M's, which they stumble upon, is supposed to be a diner sort of thing with a what do you call it, a garden. And her garden is full of stone statues of a variety, right? But it's a diner nonetheless. We did not get a diner. That really bothered me. But nonetheless, they're followed by the Fury, which is given the name Electo. I don't remember if that
is her name in the book. Yes.
Okay, I couldn't remember for sure.
The Furies have names. I can't remember the third one, but there's Electo, Megara, and I can't remember the third one, but I'll look it up.
Megara. But Electo, really? all I could think about were the Caros when I saw Electo. I was just like, oh yeah, that was one of the Caros from Harry Potter. But anyway,
that's why.
I know. But that being said, she follows them, but when Medusa arrives, you don't know it's Medusa. She just says, I'm Auntie M, or no, she actually does say she's Medusa. Again, that was something that was not done in the book like that, but she's very nicely dressed. She's got like this really adorable, like 1950s sort of hat that covers her eyes, but everyone knows to look away, including Electo, the Fury, who is just deadly afraid of Medusa, right? And when the trio go into Medusa's home, again, not a diner, really bothers me, and we're getting this story about Medusa because Annabeth feels some type of way. Percy is kind of like this whole, my mom used to tell me stories about the gods and things like that and monsters. And one thing that she would always say is that not everything is what they appear to be, basically. So in other words, Medusa may not be the monster that we've all been told to believe. And I'm going to let you take this from here because I know you have a lot to say about the story of Medusa and the changes that were made for this chapter.
I don't unfortunately have it with me, but I could probably put a link to it. But Variety magazine did a whole article with an interview with Rick and his wife talking about why they did the changes for Medusa. And their original storytelling is that, she was a, like in the older myths, the Greek myths, she was a Gorgon. She was one of the three sisters. She was a monster born that way. But in the newer, more Roman adaptations, still 3,000 years ago, I say newer, but y'all know what I mean. That it kind of takes a different perspective of her, that she was a woman and she was a devotee, a priestess to Athena. And Athena is a virgin goddess. So one of the things that priestesses of virgin goddesses have to do is also have a vow of chastity. And we do not know the levels of consent that were involved with her involvement, with Medusa's involvement with Poseidon. But intimate relations did occur inside Athena's temple. Athena was pissed. And Athena took it out on Medusa. and by turning her that way. And there are a lot of people, especially more in modern times, that are seeing it as, she said, as a gift. Like she was like, but this is, and again, for if any listeners or viewers are sensitive to any of this information, do what's safe for you. Maybe skip ahead, but in a lot of viewpoints where if it was sexual assault that Poseidon did to Medusa, then having it so that no other man can look at her, to turn her beauty into a weapon, was kind of a way to protect herself. Other ones take it as a punishment, as like, hey, she was the victim, but we are punishing her by taking away her great beauty. But she didn't care about her beauty. She cared about Athena. That's why she was a priestess to Athena. So it's just, there's a lot of sensitive information there, and a lot of people who, it's not every single case, but a lot of people who have Medusa tattoos are victims of SA. So it's just kind of, it's a very sensitive topic. And I think, and so when I was reading that article, that interview with Rick, he and his wife thought it was very, very important to kind of make it as ambiguous as possible, still acknowledging, hey, that could have been how it happened.
Yeah.
This also could have been how it happened. Like, we get both sides of the coin. And I think they handled it with such beautiful nuance, because like adults watching it, we can understand what she was implying and what she was saying. Children are only going to understand the basis. Like, she didn't outright say like what Poseidon did to her. But
she just said, bullies. Bullies.
He said he loved me.
That's a level that, that's a level that I think younger audiences could definitely understand.
Exactly. So it's like, it's a way that younger audiences can, and this is, and I wish I had pulled that article up so I could quote it directly, but Rick and his wife were saying that it's ambiguous enough that children can still understand what happened without understanding the, I guess, the darker, violent side of what actually could have happened. And then as they get older, if they revisit the show, they can be like, oh, that, like, they can still, it doesn't leave anybody in the dark.
Yeah.
That's what I thought was very important. And as somebody who like knows, again, I'm so involved in the mythology that I've seen the different changes and the different adaptations of Medusa. Seeing them handle that, again, ambiguous, nuanced story, and hitting all those bases all at once, was phenomenally crafted. And it's not going to be like the books, but again, this might be something that Rick wanted to change later on, because again, it's more of a modern thing for her to kind of be a patron saint of victims. And I thought that, to me, if like, that was a very clear sign of Rick being like, I needed to change that. So I'm changing it. And she's beautiful. She's gorgeous. And I even said, but again, because I know the myths or whatever, that seeing in the first episode, and like one of the first scenes of Percy's flashback to when he was a kid, seeing the statue of Perseus holding Medusa's head, and Sally said, like, what makes you think she was a monster? I verbally turned to Will and anybody else that I watched it with. I'm like, do you think she feels any connection or relationship to Medusa because she was also with Poseidon? Like, I said that. And then this episode happened and I'm like, oh, thank you.
And that's something that even when Medusa goes to the kitchen, Percy follows her and she says something along those lines of, your mother and I are more alike than you think.
Yeah.
And Yeah, they're more like sisters, and I mean that's a bit of a stretch. When you use the word sister like that, it's a little much, especially with the undertones of what may have transpired, with
Yes.
to Medusa, and it's kind of weird, like a weird way of like kind of sugarcoating something, but it has
Yes.
such dark undertones underneath, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I wonder, and this is probably also the reason why I had a problem with this rewrite. I understand changes have been made. I understand it once again, even with Sally, a lot more empowered as a woman standing up against her husband than she was in the
Mm-hmm.
books, as opposed to the movie as well. But when you're going to change and then include the sort of story about Medusa, but not really tell the story, it's kind of like you have to cater to all these different audiences, of course,
Mm-hmm.
older, younger, people who are familiar with the books and those who are not. Is it really going to land though? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it
Mm-hmm.
going to be understood? Is it going to have that impact that you want it to? I understand as the creator of the story that you wanted to be able to tell more than what you could when writing the book, and
Mm-hmm.
you're given this platform to do that. But is it going to land? Is it going to have that impactful nature that you hope it will? Because I feel like it's going to just kind of go over people's heads and just be like, is this even worth the screen time? You know what I mean? Because the chapter is written so
Mm-hmm.
differently in the book than what we were given in the show.
But
So I've been
from what I'm seeing from a lot of comments and reviews, and even new watchers, old watchers, a lot of people are very okay with the change
yeah. Okay.
because of it. Like, oh, like from what I'm seeing, overall, a lot of people are like, okay, they changed it. I liked how they did it. And again, like it's just how what I was saying is they handled it in such a way that so many different levels of audience can understand.
Mhm.
And I think it landed perfectly. Like because it's not just talking about Medusa and her story, although I do read it in the tragic way.
Yeah.
That sounds bad of me, but I do read it in that way, and I
Well, not everything's sunshine and roses either. So,
especially in Greek mythology, and that's kind of
yeah.
the thing is Greek mythology
And
can be violent.
Greek
It can
tragedies, that's a genre for a reason.
Yeah, it's why we have the genre. It's I like Greek can be violent, it can be gory, it can be horrible,
Mhm.
horrifying. And I think they handled it in a way where like yeah, we're learning something and we're learning how interpretation is important.
Mhm.
And I think that's very, very important to Percy Jackson as a whole and as a
Mhm.
series. And it's also showing I guess not necessarily the faults, but the different
Interpretations.
different
Characterizations.
interpretations
Mhm.
of Athena and Poseidon too, which is
Yep.
Annabeth's mother and Percy's father. So it's
Mhm.
like there's all of the I think it was a lot more loaded than just did it land having this message. I think it landed 5,000 different lessons in one, and I think it did phenomenal.
And you know what? And to your point, and I'll absolutely give you the credit for this
Mhm.
because you're making me view the perspective differently, because of what transpired with Medusa telling her story or her interpretation of the story
Mhm.
versus, Annabeth was very like standoffish, like, no, that's not what happened, but which is very true to just life in general.
Yeah.
One event can happen and two people or multiple people are going to have their own version of it,
Mhm.
right? So when it comes to pass where even Medusa is trying to bargain with Percy about, you know, giving up your friends, for your mother kind of thing, you're seeing, for me at least, even then, it's like, oh, well, she's playing him. She may really actually be
Mhm.
the monster that everyone says that she is. Percy's just being naive. He's just being, trying to give someone the opportunity, and maybe you shouldn't, but he bolts, right? And
Yes.
the kids are going to defeat her. Wunderbar, they do. Kind of ingenious, really, with using Annabeth's Yankees cap that turns Medusa invisible.
Better than an iPhone in the movie.
Oh, I know. That was so funny. But Percy is able to cut off Medusa's head with help of Annabeth by, pointing out like, oh, she's right there. And poor Grover, the shoes that Luke gave Percy to, quote, help him, also have wings. And Grover activates them without really meaning to. But anyway, that's beside the point.
He just goes,
yeah, he just, bye. After all said and done, they're trying to figure out what to do with Medusa's head, right? They can't bring it with them. They can't, just leave it there for someone to accidentally stumble upon. Percy's already made the decision, hey, we're going to leave the ball cap on so that, no one can see it. And Annabeth is kind of like, okay, yeah, fine, which is curious because she's the one who, all the way to this point, who's calling all the shots. And, Percy kind of calls her out at one point and says like, hey, well, since I don't have a connection with my dad because he's Poseidon, you seem to have it really good with your mom. Like, let's recruit her for help. You guys are tight, right? And it sounded very condescending and like very like
passive
aggressive, but you could see that hurt, on Annabeth. And then you come to the realization that she too does not have a connection or a relationship with her godparent or her godly parent exactly like Percy does. And Grover has to lay it out straight.
And even then, like just minutes later, when talking about Medusa, she says that she devoted, prayed, sacrificed, did so many things for Athena, and she never answered. And so it's just kind of like we're seeing all of these different aspects. That's the word I want to use. We're seeing all of these different aspects of the gods, of creatures, and of Medusa. And I think I've talked to you plenty about it, but I haven't really talked about it on the pod. There's a gentleman Jay, who's writing a musical about the Odyssey.
Yep.
Beautiful, fantastic. One of the song's lines is like, "When does a man become a monster?" Ooh. And that song is beautiful, by the way. It's Just a Man. It's on Spotify. I genuinely am obsessed with this musical. And
We're not sponsored. We're not sponsored by the Odyssey, but sponsor us.
The Odyssey?
The Odyssey. What did I just say?
The musical.
The musical.
Well, he kind of needs sponsors too, so that he couldn't be a sponsor if he wanted to.
Win-win.
But I only like little over 10 songs are out at the moment, but 13 songs are out at the moment of the there's going to be 40 total in the whole musical. But I've been following this for 4 years. I am so invested in this musical. Please, somebody comment or message me and talk so I can talk about this musical. It's phenomenal. But Poseidon is the main villain, so that's definitely a different aspect of Poseidon, because the sea can be violent as well as it can be calm. But one of the songs that Odysseus sings is when he has to make a difficult choice, like, when does a man become a monster? It's like, when does a comet become a meteor? When does a candle become a blaze? Like, it's just, when does a man become a monster? And I think
the answer is always.
Well, I think like it's kind of showing like at what point does Medusa go from a victim to a monster man-eater? When does she when does Poseidon go from a very chill, loving god who's Percy's father to a man who curses a guy to spend 20 years away from home in the ocean? Like, when does Athena become like the goddess of wisdom and strategy and then turn into be the goddess of war? And like, it's a very interesting thing. And I think the Medusa episode has so many moments that encapsulates it.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you've explained it very, very well for someone who, I have an interest, not as great as an interest as you, but to shed light from a completely different perspective. Because again, I took this whole thing with the TV series in the literal sense of it's going to be truer to the books. So I want it to be exactly like the books, but obviously creative liberties are always going to be given, especially when you have the creator involved, right?
Mhm.
So it totally just makes sense. But with that being said, one thing I kind of draw issue with the end of how the trio use Medusa's head to basically defeat Electo the Fury.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute, like we're supposed to see Mrs. Dodds again or Electo again, like in future books. So it's kind of like when Percy steps out, he kind of has like this come to Jesus moment with Annabeth. They seem to be, behaving better, because they do reveal to each other, hey, I was told to do this to give you up. Oh, by the way, yeah, I was gonna do the same, but I didn't, or I was told to do the same, but I didn't. So they kind of like, okay, cool, like we're cool. He steps out, he shows the head to Electo, she turns into stone and then like cracks, like falls over and cracks. So I'm like, okay, but is she dead? Like, is she dead? Because we're supposed to see Mrs. Dodds again in future.
I don't think she's dead. Or
Okay.
even then, like, I mean, we also just saw her. We in the first episode saw her get impaled by Percy's sword and then vaporize like monsters do. So I kind of just took the cracking as like the Medusa form of vaporizing. Because if she didn't crack, if she was just a statue, then we would have to assume that Hades or either of her sisters, Persephone or Megara, went to go somehow heal her, and we don't know if there's a cure for Medusa's stare. So, like, if they had left her as just a statue, then that would cause more problems. But having her crumble like that, I took it as like that's just her.
Maybe
Thanos snapping away.
Maybe. Okay, sure. We'll just have to wait and see.
Because she does come back. I mean, she literally was stabbed in the first episode, and she comes back like not even a full episode later. So
that's true.
Yeah, we will see her again. So don't worry about it.
It just seemed like kind of final, I guess you could say, because usually when everyone turns to stone, and then when you turn to stone, and then you like completely crack. Because I'm thinking very similar to Chronicles of Narnia with the White Witch.
Oh, yeah.
She had her little scepter thing. She takes a griffin out from the sky, and it turns it into stone, and it crashes and breaks into a million pieces. And it's like, oh, he dead. Anyway, I do love that the kids sent the head to Olympus, which
love it. I am impertinent.
Yeah, Olympus in this world is above the Empire State Building. It's on the 600th floor of the Empire State Building. You see a carrier carry this package all the way through. Camera pans up, and you see none other than Lin-Manuel Miranda, who is very well known as Hamilton, amongst other things. But
who's that? I see Hermes.
I know, but he plays Hermes.
I know.
He's uncredited in this episode, but once the elevator doors open to Olympus, he kind of smiles and walks out. He's like, "You guys are never gonna believe this," and it's just like, it's hilarious. That's funny. So the kids ship Medusa's head to Olympus. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, what's not to love?
I love it so much, and I'm a little surprised at him playing Hermes.
I'm not. But not at all.
I think it's more of just because I always saw him as so musical because of all of his projects, not just Hamilton. But like the only other god that he could be, the god of music, would be Apollo, and he's not Apollo. So
no, I think Hermes is perfect.
Yeah, like now that I've seen it, I'm like, oh, for sure.
Yeah, and how much more we'll get of Lin-Manuel as Hermes in this season, not sure, but I think that just that little snippet.
See more.
Yeah, but that little snippet was wonderful. I think that was great. So for next episode 4 will be entitled "I Plunge to My Death." Now I'm actually very excited about this episode because this is actually something that did not make it at all into the movie, The Lightning Thief, years and years ago, because they deviated in the movie. They went to Tennessee instead of going to St. Louis, like this chapter is gonna take place in. So I'm very excited to see how the events with the Chimera are going to transpire at the St. Louis Arch. So
I'm excited for how Percy gets from point A to water, because like Rick has addressed that he did genuinely think that it went over water when he wrote the books, but it is quite a distance from the water.
He's gonna fly.
Where I kind of just like imagine like kind of in Moana, like when the water like reaches up and catches her.
Exactly.
That's what I'm envisioning. I'm just wanting.
That would make the most sense, I think, for sure.
Because I just want to see Percy's thought process when he sees it and is just like, I can make that. Oh, yeah. Like, I need to see it. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I need to see the Chimera.
I need to see the Chimera. I just need to see this whole sequence like actually play out, because this was a really great chapter. This is actually an event that will play on later in future books with a certain character. So again, these, planting the seeds here and now, and if they execute it right, that's cool for me personally, because again, I told you from at the top of the show, even before, not entirely feeling the series, just thus far. This episode, because it was something not included in the movie, I'm hoping they will be able to redeem themselves for my sake. I'm still gonna watch the series. Like, I mean, we're almost halfway there. Excuse Luna in the background; she's got feelings too. But that being said, probably need a wrap soon. But I'm excited about what's going to happen with this next episode, and hopefully, we will have more positive thoughts when we review the episode for next week. So, Amber, any final thoughts on the first 3 episodes of Percy Jackson and the Olympians?
I loved it. Keep up the good work, kids. I'm very, very excited for it. Somebody please message me so that I can like scream about Greek mythology and also the Odyssey musical called Epic the Musical. If you want to find it. But yeah, seriously, somebody please, I need to talk about this. I had a very Greek winter. I need to talk about it. But overall, I really loved it. I enjoyed it. And the yin to your yang, whatever. We 2 sides of a coin here. But I really, really loved it. And
that's okay. I mean, we just have perspectives, different perspectives to share, and we're learning from each other. And hopefully, with other people who are watching the live stream or rewatch our pod later, they'll be able to share their thoughts in the comments down below. We very much appreciate y'all taking the time to do that.
Really quick, you guys should also let us know if you were a demigod, who do you think would be your Olympic parent or your godly parent? I just did one of those random filters on TikTok. I did it like 8 times and I kept getting Hades. So I'm in good company. I'm happy with that. He is one of my favorites, him and his wife. So I am not mad about that. But
I'm gonna have to ponder on this.
Yeah,
I might have to ponder on this, honestly. I'll have to come back with my answer for next week's pod if I can talk. So yeah, looking forward to that. We invite everyone to join us next week, probably next Wednesday, if all goes well, to join us for our review of episode 4. Once again, that's going to be entitled I Plunged to My Death, and we'll see if I have any different views when it comes down to watching the series. So Amber, before we head out, you want to quickly talk about your YouTube channel, your wonderful YouTube channel?
Thank you very much, and for stealing my pun. Between you and Justin, guys, you got to give me some room here.
Sorry.
If you love Harry Potter, like we mentioned earlier in this episode, I have a channel that covers the wand lore of the Wizarding World. So every episode, I pick a wand and we discuss the cultural, historical, and symbolic references of the wood, the core that the magical beast at the core comes from, and sometimes we go into length and flexibility sometimes, but I go into the entire wand stats and I compare that to the personality of the witch or wizard who owns that wand. And it's very fun and informative. So, and I do a lot of research in it. So if you like me info dumping about wands and cultural historical stuff and just basically just info dumping about wood for a good like 8 minutes, yeah, go watch my videos. It's on OllivAmbers.wands. That's OllivAmbers.wands. And yeah, like Ollivander, OllivAmber, but it also sounds like all of Amber's wands because I have so many.
She does.
Like, yeah, it's like over 50.
Oh, just, you know, just no big deal. No big deal at all. So y'all check out her YouTube channel, her Instagram. Both links are in the description box down below. Go show her some love. Go subscribe.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. And before we head out, I want to remind everyone to please subscribe to the Watchers in the Basement. We are just 8. Can I do my math right? Yes, we are 8 subscribers away from hitting 300. We're trying to hit 300 by the end of 2023, people. That's just a couple days away. We're almost there. Help us reach that goal. Don't forget to like this video as well. Hit that notification bell. That way, you know, the next time we go live. But also don't forget to follow us on our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, all at Watchers Basement. You can use that same hashtag when chatting about us, or tag us in your post, hashtag Watchers Basement, when you want to share articles, memes, anything that you want us to review. And lastly, we also have audio podcasts, if you're not into video podcasts, available to you on Apple and Spotify. Be sure to follow and give us a 5-star rating. So Amber, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to have someone to talk Percy Jackson with here on the Watchers in the Basement, because the other guys are just not into it. It's sad.
Party really. Poopers.
I know, poopers. But that being said, we're about to head out for the rest of our night. We appreciate everyone who's taking the time to join us today, and we hope that we will see y'all in the live chat for the next Percy Jackson and the Olympians pod review. Until then, we will see you. Have a happy new year. Have a wonderful beginning to 2024, and join us in 2024 as well. So everyone, have a good one.
Bye.